Hi, my name is Brian and I want to thank you for tuning in. I'm going to start with a shot of my saltwater reef tank. I'm still in the setup stage. I've been at this stage for about 4.5 months now. The tank went live in about mid-October. It's now mid-February. And today I'm going to be doing some maintenance on my ReeFlo Dart Snapper hybrid pump, which has developed a seal leak. Okay, this is my fish room that goes with my 340-gallon acrylic tank. And as you can see, I have a manifold there. That's not the noise you hear in the background. The squeal is coming from this pump, and you can see this white incrustation, which is actually a little bit of salt residue. And I guess in the last day or so, this has gotten worse. And so I'm going to deal with it today. ReeFlo was very, very good about it. I sent them an email. They asked for the serial number, which is located here on the pump, and I emailed it to them, and they UPS'd me the seal and the instructions, so they get an A+ there. So what I'm going to do here is set up my tripod, get the tools that I'll need for the job, and set up a temporary workspace, and set up my tripod, and then I will proceed to take this apart. So the way my tank is set up is I have a valve here that I can cut off the inlet to the pump. I have a union here where I can disconnect the pump. I'll have to disconnect my temperature, pH, and ORP probes, which you can see here, here, and here. And then I'll be able to disconnect the other side of this at this union here. And that will enable me to remove the pump, and I'll probably actually work on it up here on this messy workbench. You know, I guess in an ideal world my workbench would be clean, but hey, you know, this isn't the part of the hobby that most people see, and I'm really grateful to have so much space. So, I'll be right back. Now, there are different ways to shut down your tank. What I've done is I just simply turned off the power switches because I think it's actually quicker and simpler. So first things first is I'm going to begin to isolate the system by turning these two ball valves. That has isolated the system. Now I'm going to open my drain, which is actually for doing water changes, but it is useful in situations like this too. That will allow some of the water to escape somewhere else. And you know, the only bad thing about working on salt water is it has a really nasty tendency to destroy all the metal tools that come into contact with it. Now I've got some little solo cups here that I'm going to use to put my probes in. I don't know if I need to do this or not. I just don't like having my probes sit out because they are scientific instruments. And I think that they are better off in a little cup of water. Where we put them, I guess we'll put them on the floor. It doesn't really matter which one goes in which hole, as long as they're in a hole and they're tightened down. So, I'm just going to arrange my little cups down here. And I'll use my wrench to loosen these. I'll be right back. One of the nice things about this setup is that as I unscrew these probe ports, it creates a little bit of an air gap, and when I slowly withdraw this, it allows the air to go in and the water to go down. You didn't hear it when I did the first one because I had the camera off. And these ports are available on the internet. They're really great. They do apparently leak just a very small amount of salt water, but it's really pretty irrelevant. So next what I'll do is go ahead and use a bucket under here to contain my salt water. And the next step is I'll show this after I remove the pump, because I do actually have to undo a few screws and I don't want to waste time on YouTube. Okay, so I've gone ahead and removed the pump from underneath my sump. This is my manifold that the probe's attached to, and this is part of my fill mechanism. I have a fairly elaborate setup. It makes it a little easier to do maintenance. Here are the parts that were sent to me by ReeFlo. So these are the two seals here, and they sent me a new impeller. It's marked with a number 9. Really nice of them. So what I'm going to do at this point is go ahead and separate the housing, and I'm actually going to turn the camera off for that because it's not very exciting. And let's see, here are the instructions. It probably will tell me what size the bolts are. So I'll be right back in just a minute. So one of the things I remembered is that they had been kind enough to send me some step-by-step instructions, so I'll be using these. If you're doing this as part of warranty or you're just working on it, you can probably contact ReeFlo and get them to send you these instructions. And it requires a 3/8 inch wrench, 2 flat tip screwdrivers, a pair of long nose pliers, a 13/16 inch socket, and this is to use to drive the seal in, and of course something to encourage the seal with. So one of the important things I'll mention here is I'm not going to remove my threaded fittings, because this will simply is one less thing for me to do. This part's going to come off and just be set to the side. So I'll be right back with these removed. Okay, so I'm removing the last nut here. One of the things that's really nice that I'll point out about the way this pump is designed is these are self-holding bolts, so you don't need a screwdriver or another wrench. You know, I've always been really impressed with ReeFlo's products, and they've really gone the extra mile in this case. So I'll go ahead and slide all these out. You know, it only costs a fraction more to put these kind of bolts in, but it makes doing maintenance just that much easier. And this is just a really, really well designed product. This pump draws 100 watts of electricity when it's running, so here you can see I've removed my manifold assembly, and I'm just going to rest it in here. I'm actually going to extract, yeah, not getting too much in here. Looks like I've got a little cement residue, and I'm checking for burrs and other deformations and debris along where the seal goes. I don't see anything, so I'll go ahead and just set it off to the side. And these O-rings are not reusable. I am inspecting it for problems to see if there's anything that might have caused a leak. I don't see anything, so it's off to the trash, that goes. And I'll be right back. Okay, so the instructions suggest that you can insert a screwdriver in the end of the pump like this, and then that enables this to simply be unscrewed. And here we have the actual seal that failed. Let's compare it to the new one for kicks and giggles. You know, this seal is flat, and this seal has 2 little notches right here and right there, so yeah, this is either going to work or it's going to be right back for another replacement, because these are either intentionally, I don't know if you can see these are either intentional or they're defective, but we'll find out when we install it. Now, there is one area I disagree with the instructions. They say to use these needle nose pliers. You aren't going to be able to see this. There's a screw here, here, and 2 on the other side. Needle nose pliers are never the appropriate tool for a bolt or a nut. It's the fastest way to strip one and ruin it. So I went ahead and figured out that it is a 1/4 inch, and that the open side fits best in here. The instructions say just to loosen this. Again, I'm just not an advocate of using a pair of pliers to work on a bolt, because what happens is you'll strip this the second or third time you do it, and then you'll never be able to get in here. And this is already a big enough mess with all the salt accumulation that's in here. And unfortunately, salt is one of the single most corrosive substances known to man. It has destroyed more inexpensive tools out here in this area than I could shake a stick at. And as you can see, it doesn't really take very long to get these bolts loose. Okay, so we'll see how they have me remove this. Be right back. Okay, so once these have been loosened, the bracket has can very easily be removed. And I'm going to grab a towel here. Fortunately, I have my own washer and dryer, so dealing with all this junk that's coming out of here isn't a big deal. I just want to keep the mess contained. It doesn't look like the seal survived. We'll see here in a second. So I'm going to clean this out a little bit here because there's just a lot of corrosion. Be right back. One of my concerns, you're not going to be able to see it in the video, but this salt that's been seeping out of here and accumulating has caused a good deal of corrosion. The seal appears to have simply disintegrated, but there's a lot of corrosion right here on the shaft, and I'm concerned that if I try to slide a new seal over this, that it's going to damage the seal. So what I've done is I've taken just a small piece of sandpaper. I'm going to clean the shaft up a little bit. It's a fine sandpaper. It's nothing magical. Just tore a little piece off, and I'm just going to go like this and try and get some of this gunk off here. You could be tempted to scrape it, but that might leave grooves on there. Sandpaper is really not ideal, but it'll work for what I'm doing. So you can see in my piece of sandpaper that there was a significant amount of junk that had built up on there. I really don't like sanding a shaft. These need to be perfectly smooth to give a good seal. So what I'm doing is feeling here, and there's a little bit of pitting that went on there, and it's filled with junk, and I really can't get rid of it. But we're going to give it a whirl, and if it leaks again, we're probably going to have to replace the pump entirely, because I just can't have leaks in my aquarium. And these are those 4 little screws that they wanted me to use needle nose pliers on. And again, I think 1/4 inch wrench is the right way to go. So what I'm going to do is clean this mess up, give it a couple good wraps, and it's just full of junk in here. So we'll see what the instructions say. So the instructions suggest that we use a small piece of wood, and let me see if I have something smaller. Nah, I don't. This will work. So we'll extract this. And yeah, I'll tell you what, this part of the seal is in here. Oh. Well, you know, it's possible that I'm doing that backwards because it does show the other direction. Yeah. Oh, that makes more sense. So, RTFM, or read the freaking manual. And you can see there's some silicone here, or some, looks like Teflon tape. Why you'd use Teflon tape on a seal, but Everybody does things a little differently. So again, I'm going to use my sandpaper to, well, actually I don't think I am going to clean this up. I'm just going to leave that because it's outside the pump and it's outside the seal surface. I'm going to try and get as much of this junk out of here with my finger. My finger is softer than the plastic, so it won't scrape this, and this is a sealing surface, so I do want it to be right. This is the old seal, which has very obviously disintegrated and stopped doing its job. It's a nice little spring-loaded seal. We'll be right back in just a minute. Now, one thing the pliers are good for is pulling this plug out of this silicone. You know, silicone tends to cure over time, and it can be a little hard, and all I need is a small amount of this. So we'll actually cheat and use something else. Now, if we're lucky, we'll squeeze a little bit out of here. Yeah. I think this is probably shot. As typically happens with silicone, you wind up with either too little or way too much. But this will work for what we need. And of course it's going to go everywhere now, so we'll set it over there. Okay, so I've skipped the part where I put silicone in here, but I've put way more than I probably should. And that's okay, because the objective here is to make sure that it is fully sealed. So at this point I'll go ahead and take the seal out of its package. I'm going to go ahead and clean it with alcohol anyway. It's probably clean, but you can never really be too careful with these. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of denatured alcohol on here. It's the same thing as rubbing alcohol. I just happen to have this. And then I'm going to wait for this to dry and make sure I get the inside and outside of the seal. So what the alcohol will do is remove any additional moisture that may be on there. And then I'm just going to simply push it into place. And what you can see here is it pushes my silicone out, and I'm just going to smear the silicone around a little bit. And the silicone helps to form a little bit better seal. And this is just general purpose silicone. If you don't have silicone, you could use caulk, but it's important to use caulk that doesn't have a mold inhibitor, because the mold inhibitor is toxic to marine life, in particular corals, and that's what I intend to eventually keep in my tank. So at this point, we simply reverse the process and we reassemble the pump. Pay attention to the keying of the pump, and the keying is how this goes together so that you don't change the index of your pump. If you were to put this on at the wrong angle, your bottom would be in a different location, and it might cause you some aggravation down the road. So I'll go ahead and tighten these. Next, I'll reinstall the impeller, and I'm using a screwdriver in the slot at the back of the motor shaft. And what that does is stops my shaft from spinning as I screw on my impeller. Try not to cross thread this. It is fairly fine threaded, and it does have a little bit of resistance as the metal cuts into the plastic. And you screw this until it engages the spring seal. So you're not going to be able to see that. So what I'll do is just kind of turn and point. On the old seal, there's a spring here, and when I press this, it forces itself against the impeller. And so what I'm going to do is screw the impeller in until this gap disappears and it pushes against the impeller. And I've actually screwed it in, and I'm going to see if there's a speck here. So when the motor turns, it's going to force the impeller up against the shaft, so I've just snugged it up against there and let it stop. At this point, what I need to do is locate my new O-ring. Now, it doesn't look like they included a new O-ring, so that's one thing I'm actually pretty critical of. This O-ring has some junk on it. As a general rule, I don't like to reuse O-rings because they're a really inexpensive part. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse it. One of the nice things about having a reef tank is I have a plentiful supply of deionized water. And for a lubricant, I'm going to use a non-petroleum based silicone lube. And this is actually an Ike part, which I use on my scuba diving camera gear. And it's part number 0184.1. These are very inexpensive. Any local dive shop should carry them. And they're 25 cents, 50 cents. And it contains 1 or 2 cc's of non-petroleum based lubricant. And my thinking is that it works for O-rings on cameras that work at depths of a couple hundred feet. It should be good for this. You want to use plenty of it, and you can see I'm just squirting a little bit onto my finger and then gently working it down the O-ring. This prevents binding, and that helps the O-ring do a little bit better job sealing. Do not pull the O-ring, because if you stretch it, you will change its ability to seal. And I'm just going to set that in there. And then to simplify the reassembly process, I'm going to do it with the motor on its back. And again, I don't want to pinch the O-ring in the process. And that's actually what my primary concern is at this point, is that because if I pinch the O-ring, it's going to compromise the seal and the pump's going to leak. As I was saying earlier, this has been a really nice little pump. It's super quiet. It is very, very energy efficient. It only uses about 100 watts under load, and I have a digital aquatics control system and monitor that helps me determine what my pump usage, or what my watt draw is. So these bolts have a little key on them, and so if I simply insert them in and then I just turn them a little bit, they will engage the square component, and some of them are a little harder than others. So I've got one that's being a little bit of trouble, but I don't want to get distracted. So what I'm going to do is actually start to insert the bolt so that the pump kit face cannot go sideways on me. This would be a lot easier with a helper, but as you can see, it's not really that difficult to do by yourself. Okay, some of these are a little harder than others. But again, this is not what I would refer to as rocket science. Now, I'm not sure if there's a right way and a wrong way to do this, but I'm going to do what I would do on a cylinder head, which is I'm going to tighten this down a little bit, and then I'm going to go to the other side and tighten it down a little bit. Again, my goal is to prevent pinching the O-ring. And what I'm trying to do is just gradually lock the O-ring in, and then I'll tighten the rest of the bolts. And I don't think it needs to be super tight, but I'm going to make it what I refer to as snug. And You can see this is not a terribly time-consuming process. I think it's taken me longer to actually start and stop the camera and set the camera up than it actually takes to do the maintenance. I did turn off the power and I did unplug the pump, but I wasn't in the mood to unwind all the cord and get it out from behind my sump. So you'll see a cord hanging off in the distance behind me. It's important that you treat electricity with a lot of respect when you're working around salt water. You know, salt water is an excellent conductor. It's part of what makes it really corrosive, and you don't want to be the ground path for your saltwater aquarium. I used to have a 135-gallon tank, and this was back in the late 90s. That was my first large saltwater tank, and it was the tank that I said if I ever had another tank it would be as big as I could possibly afford. And this 500-gallon system is about as big as I can possibly afford right now. But I had a UV filter, and the UV filter had developed a leak and shorted out in the tank, and I didn't realize it until I stuck my hand in the sump. And I got a little tickle. And that's as close as I've ever come to being shocked by my aquarium. And that was close enough. So at this point, I'm going to double check that all my bolts are snug and that the process of tightening did not loosen any of my other bolts. That would be a bad thing. So everything looks good at this point. My pump is reassembled and ready to go back in. One of the things I'll point out while I'm doing this, I took some lube and put on the end of these unions because salt crystals will develop on the O-rings, and I lubed those O-rings as well to stop the salt crystals from cutting in. Okay, so I've gone ahead and reassembled the plumbing, and what I'm going to do at this point is go ahead and open my drain because I want to bleed out as much of the air as possible. And I'm going to go ahead and let a little bit of water in, and when I hear it start to drain, I'll turn it off. And that's how I bleed my pump system. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's good enough, I believe. So I'm going to do a real quick check for leaks, and then I'm going to power my system back up. It may take a second for the controller to kick the pump on. Well, that's a little quieter than I would expect. Now, looks like I plugged it into the wrong place, so there it goes. It's not silent, but it's certainly quieter, and you'll see that my sump is going to drain down. It's always important when you plan your sump to have enough capacity in your sump to absorb any drain down that your tank may cause. It's really frustrating. This used to be an absolutely silent pump, and I'm not convinced that it won't leak again. But, you know, for now it's not leaking. Thanks for watching my video.